Let's go over how much of a piece of shit Alan Derschowitz is, weighing in on this particular case. I don't even know why this news channel, not the live caster, not this Tyler fella, but he's covering some footage from like a correspondent, right? And they had interviewed Alan Dershowitz, who was formerly very tight with Jeffrey Epstein. He was tight with Donald Trump. And he also represented O.J. Simpson.
Was Jody's intervention that prevented that. And it was manipulating him, saying, if you just do this, if you just overcome your greed and your selfishness and your narcissism, you will get your family back together, but you got to stay away and you got to repent. And so he was following, again, what he thought was expert advice, and that's why he was so distraught and felt deceived and disappointed and frightened when this all came out.
Castor says it was Hildebrandt's involvement that unraveled the Franke family.
There's a lot I want to tell you, but probably shouldn't at this point, because it's kind of delicate between the state and him trying to get his kids back. So
he shouldn't get his kids back.
But there's a lot to be told. There's a lot of chapters in this book, and the more I dig into it, the more I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think that Jody is in the middle of all this, and I describe her as an onion with an octopus inside. The more layers you peel back about.
We can't hear you, Tyler. But point being is that, Kevin, no. You watched this happen at least for 3 years. Give me a break. You should not get your kids back. You are untrustworthy at this point.
Jody's life and connections. Every time you peel back a layer, an octopus tentacle comes springing out. There is a lot to be told. This is a fascinating and tragic event in their lives, and will probably have lifelong effects. It's gonna take him a long time to help these kids get through this, the trauma that's been perpetrated on them.
He's not gonna be able
but he's
to
up to it.
I don't like feeling pain. I do not go around looking for ways to bring pain into my life. And if I stay in the reality, there are going to be inherent discomforts.
Ruby Franke, the YouTuber accused of abusing her children along with her business partner, remains in jail. How might she defend herself? One of O.J. Simpson's former lawyers is here to explain.
God damn.
Welcome to Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. I'm Anjanette Levy. Ruby Franke faces 6 felony counts of child abuse involving her children. Her business partner and friend, therapist Jody Hildebrandt, faces the same charges. Both are being held without bail at this point, and we've learned Hildebrandt has surrendered her license with the state pending the outcome of this case. A spokesperson for the state of Utah said Hildebrandt surrendered her license through her lawyer. The alleged abuse came to light last month after one of Franke's children climbed out of a window at Hildebrandt's home in Utah and went to a neighbor for help. The boy had duct tape on his ankles and wrists and appeared malnourished. Franke's 5 minor children are now in protective custody. Their father, Kevin, is trying to get custody of the children.
Four minor children. 2 of them are of age. One of them lives with Kevin already. That's Chad. And the other one, Sherry, is at Brigham Young University. So there's 4 minor children. It seems like everybody's like all over the place with how many children there are and where they were in the moment, right?
His lawyer told Law and Crime that he and Ruby were separated for 14 months and that he was not aware of the abuse. Neighbors have told a number of news outlets that they reached out to Children's Services with concerns about the Franke kids many times over the years. A spokesperson for the Division of Child and Family Services tells Law and Crime the agency affirms recent law enforcement reports of our involvement in the Franke case. But the agency said to protect its relationships with those it serves and out of respect for children and families, DCFS will not offer specific information about the case, either past or present. Questions have also been raised about
how old are all of her kids? Does anybody know the age of all of them? Because only the oldest daughter, right, is an adult, is over 18, I think. Is that correct?
2 of them.
Amy Hyde says, thank you for your kindness and generosity. Guys, a portion of every single super sticker or super chat that comes in, we use to help people in need. Amy Heights is alluding to that in this message. Thank you, Amy Heights, for that super chat. Mary Mom, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are 7 away from reaching our goal tonight.
about whether Utah's free-range parenting laws prevented DCFS from taking action sooner. A DCFS spokesperson said every referral to the agency goes through a screening process, and each complaint.
What is up with you, Utah? They're not chicken. You know? What is this free-range parenting? These are not chickens. My God.
Is handled individually. A CPS investigation for non-supervision is open, the agency says, when the information reported includes a specific occurrence or allegation that a child is subjected to an unreasonable risk of accidental harm due to a failure to supervise a child's activities. The DCFS spokesperson says free-range parenting laws do not absolve parents from supervising their children, but allow them to teach children independence and resilience. What if your partner developed 21 new identities, or you discovered that your friend who against ordinary truths have ears for infamous, but I assure you, for we're at Wondery Plus. Self in court is somebody who's spent a lot of time in courtrooms over the years. He is Professor Alan Derschowitz. He is also the author of the new book, Get Trump, The Threat to Our Civil Liberties, Due Process.
So it's the girl is 20, boy 18, girl 16, girl 14, boy 12, girl 10. Is that right?
It's somewhere around there. But you know what? I think it's a little more important to point out that the news source you used has a attorney who was super tight with Epstein, super tight with Trump, and represented O.J. Simpson during his murder trial against Nicole Brown Simpson and what was the guy's name? Ron something. Can't remember his name now. But there were two, like, he was delivering food to her house or something. It wasn't even a big deal. But you've got Alan Dershowitz, who's also apparently, like, pumping out a book, Get Trump. Really? So he's also an insurrectionist? Is that where we're going with this? What a clown. And this guy's weighing in on the case? This is gross.
Dan Russell's 12, Julie's 14, Abby's 16, I believe Chad and Sherry are of age. Interesting.
Us and our constitutional rule of law. Professor Dershowitz, welcome back to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Wow.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
Yeah, we always love.
At least he does state he's like 85, so we don't have to deal with him for much longer. He's not going to be on the planet a lot longer. Fuck's sake with this piece of shit.
Having you and getting your insight. Your thoughts on this case about Ruby Franke. This is somebody who was on YouTube for years, posting videos of her children. Now she's charged with felony child abuse along with her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, who is a therapist.
It's a very hard defense to make. I mean, the argument has to be that how parents deal with their children, particularly under the local law, is a matter of degree, and that there's a tremendous amount of discretion given to parents as to what the best method of raising their children is, and we don't want the state to go too deeply into family affairs and intrude. On the other hand, obviously, there are the rights of children who can't really defend themselves and can't articulate some claims that they have. And criminal law should never be a matter of degree. It should always be an on-off switch. It should always be a clear line. I think it was Thomas Jefferson who once said that for a criminal law to be valid, it has to be so clear that a reasonable person should be able to understand it if he reads it while running. Imagine the image. He's running, he's reading the law, and he has to be able to understand it. And so the ex post facto law of the Constitution and due process all require clear warning, clear.
That's a whole lot of word soup. That's a whole lot of word soup. He's about to tell you that, suck it up, Buttercup, that he had to endure corporal punishment, which has been outlawed for several decades now.
Notification. Whenever there are ambiguities, under the principle of lenity, the ambiguities have to be resolved in favor of the defendant. But that's always going to be a matter of degree. And if you have a case where there's clear, obvious, knowing abuse, that defense is less likely to work.
We have allegations here that a child and maybe even two children were duct taped at the ankles and wrists. Food and water were withheld as some form of, I don't know if you would call it.
Yeah, seriously, Alan. If that happened to an adult, that'd be considered kidnapping, would it not? It would be highly illegal. There would be charges. Are you saying that it's okay to do it to kids? Is that where you're going with this?
Punishment. I don't know if you find this to be some way of teaching people therapeutically. I can't even imagine any therapist saying, yes, withhold food and water from a child in order to counsel them. These are her children who were found in her business partner's home. The police apparently say they have videos of Ruby Franke in the home while this was going on. So I don't understand how anybody could say that duct taping children at the wrists and ankles is anything but abusive. And
Well, it's more than that. They were also tied by ropes, which is cut deep into their skin and created bone-deep lacerations. And then they had honey and cayenne pepper put on their open wounds. On top of that, like she was like one step away from being a serial killer in this scenario. And he's like, I don't know. Well, there's corporal punishment when I was a kid.
with withholding food and water.
Who could have imagined back when I was a kid? I just turned 85, so we're talking about almost a century ago. Parents would wash out their children's mouths with soap if they said a dirty word. They would beat them up, smack them. I got smacked by my rabbi in Hebrew school for questioning the Torah.
Did he tie you down to the ground, Alan? Did he tie you down to the ground and keep you bonded? Did he do that to you, Alan?
Those today are utterly unacceptable. I'm not suggesting that what is alleged here even fits on any continuum. All I'm suggesting is
Is he in favor of rabbis smacking kids as they're learning the Torah or against it? I couldn't tell.
the modern eye and ear, things that are clearly abusive would not have seemed abusive back then, which is why you need absolute clarity. Also, there are different cultural norms for how you treat children, different religious groups, different...
I think it's pretty clear that if you've got duct tape, rope, and things to try and like stop the bleeding so that it's not so obvious, that you're not exactly doing what's legally acceptable, right, Alan? right? It's not the same thing as getting paddled by your pastor.
Ethnic groups, different ideological groups treat their children somewhat differently. So there is a need for the future, at least. There is a need for clear guidance and statutes that say, you can't restrain your children or deny them food. On the other hand, you can deny them dessert. Everybody would acknowledge that. You can
Yes, of course. You can say you're not getting some ice cream tonight. Okay? But what does that have to do with anything? That's not what happened to these children, Alan. That's not what happened to them. They were emaciated. They were being starved and tied down to the ground. Why are you trying to make light of this? I hate that about your fucking interviews.
deny them a double portion. And so what criminal law doesn't like is matters of degree. And yet, when it comes to issues like this, there are always going to be matters of degree and matters of different attitudes by different groups of people.
There is a religious aspect to this. These are both Mormon women, Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, and we are in no way saying that, you know, the Mormon Church is saying you should be duct taping your children. That's not the point here. However, we do have some.
Yeah, so you know what? The Mormon Church should actually come out with a statement and absolutely, like, condemn what happened here. Because they were the ones recommending, their bishops were recommending people to go see Jody Hildebrandt for counseling. They're the ones who need to come out with a statement and say, we completely reject these sorts of teachings. This is not what we believe in as a religious entity. And this is not how you should treat your children. This is not how you should treat marriages. They should be the ones coming out. And yet these guys are like, I don't know. We might be able to just like talk this all away. We could probably be like, well, remember when corporal punishment was a thing like 40 years ago?
Somebody, Ruby Franke, who seems to claim that she is a devout Mormon who is concerned about things going on in the lives of her children that could be viewed as sinful. And possibly she goes to Jody Hildebrandt for help because she's a licensed counselor. And the counselor says, well, this is what we need to do. This is what needs to be done to cure these ills, whatever they may be. We still don't know what the alleged transgressions were. So is it possible, her lawyer says, she was under the spell of this woman who claimed to be a therapist and was trying to do what was best for her children because she believed something was going on with them that was harmful?
Look, this is a variation of advice of counsel defense. What she's claiming is advice of therapist defense or advice of religious leaders defense. Let's not forget how old the notion of spare the rod and spoil the child, or under the law.
No, Alan. There is no way that argument would fly in court today. Period. Nobody is going to look at the Old Testament text and say, oh yes, we can use that in court as an argument. Nobody is gonna, I can't even. Oh my God. Please just retire. Please just retire. You're already 85. God damn it, dude.
The Bible, if a child reaches a certain level of disobedience, the child could be stoned. That's in the Bible.
Oh
nobody accepts that today. But, you know, it'd be interesting to see how a jury in this part of the country reacts to the claim of...
You're not giving enough credit to Mormon families. Because I can tell you that the majority of Mormon families that I have met were wonderful, beautiful people who loved their children, treated them with kindness, and did like the best sleepovers in my neighborhood. And there is no effing way that they would be cool with this kind of discipline against their kids. That shit was not happening in my neighborhood, and we had at least one Mormon family on every block in my neighborhood. That's ridiculous to be like, well, I don't know, maybe this is just the way that their religion works. Like, this is all Alan, fuck's sake, you're an attorney. You're an attorney. And you're like, well, let me see about every argument I can come up for defending the abusers? Really? Why did this news station even invite him on? Like, he's so horrible.
Advice of counselor, advice of religious leaders, advice of friends. It's very likely the jury will find that, notwithstanding any of those defenses, this went too far. But remember, the state has to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, and all they need is one juror to have a reasonable doubt, and you have
bone deep lacerations, Alan. Bone deep lacerations on a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. What's your reasonable doubt?
hung jury.
We've seen some reporting in the Salt Lake City Tribune that there were neighbors who said they contacted Children's Services about this. They were very concerned about potential harm that the children were enduring at the hands of Ruby Franke. And these neighbors told the reporter at the Tribune that they felt like their complaints were ignored or fell on deaf ears. And they've got this free range parenting law out there in Utah where parents have, you know, wide discretion. I mean, you're supposed to be able to parent your children, right? I mean, you should have broad discretion in how you want your children to be reared. Duct taping really goes a little far with
Not broad. Not broad. You cannot be an abusive parent. That's the entire point of having child protective services. It can't be broad like that. And, you know, they're not chickens. This is not free range children running all over the place. You need to make sure they are educated. You need to make sure they have a shelter, that they are being fed, that they have utilities, that I think I already said that they get an education. They have to get enough sleep. Like, you have to give them the basic necessities for actually raising a child. Period. And it's not cool, Alan, for you to say that they have less rights than adults. If an adult is tied down against their will, and when they get deep lacerations as a result of it, they have honey and cayenne pepper dropped on the wounds. You're trying to say that, like, an adult has more rights in that situation than a child does? Oh my God, you're such a crappy person.
but you know, it's but not a little far, it goes way too far. But you know, they felt that their children were not the victims of neglect when they investigated these claims. We have these statements here from the Division of Child and Family Services in which they say they took these complaints, they evaluated them, things of that nature. So does a law like this free range parenting law not empower a children's services agency to take more action?
Keep in mind that Alan Derschowitz was tight with Jeffrey Epstein, who was doing human trafficking of underage minors.
Well, it does, and it requires the striking of an appropriate balance. I'll never forget the time I was a law clerk in Washington. I would take the bus to work every day, and I heard two people speaking. I overheard them speaking. They were both child care people, and one of them said, "What do you do when the kid yells?" And one says, "Well, I smack him." And the other one said, no, there's a better way of doing it. I put his head in the oven for a couple of seconds.
Oh my
and
God.
that makes sure that he stops crying. I immediately called child services when I heard about that. And they did nothing. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what the result was. There are terrible things out there. Look, think about people in history who have killed their children.
You are a powerful businessman, and you couldn't get CPS to respond to a claim like that? You're a powerful businessman. You obviously didn't push it enough if you couldn't get a response on that, because that's fucking crazy. What is this, like, what's that, the children's novel, where the witch tries to put the two kids in the oven. You couldn't do something about that? Are you for fucking real? How do you, in your position, not get something done on an accusation like that? I can't even with this guy. He's so bad. He's so bad, you guys.
To protect them from worse things happening to them. Probably the most famous person in modern history was Joseph Goebbels, the head of the Nazi information group. When he saw that the war was over,
Guys, we only have about 5 minutes left on our stream today. We have 7 more super stickers before we reach our goal. I'm really hoping we're going to be able to reach our goal. So help me out if you're able to. You want to come alongside and support us.
He and his wife poisoned their 6 children to spare them a world without Hitler. Now, nobody would justify anything like that. But the range of human attitudes toward children ranges from the horrors of Joseph Goebbels to a parent who might lose temper for a second and take out the strap and hit their child. Today, that would be regarded as abusive. So what we need are clear laws with clear lines prohibiting certain kinds of conduct. But even that won't solve all the problems, because there are so many ways of abusing children that
No, Alan. No. You could absolutely apply the laws that we have for adults. If it's not allowed for adults, it should not be allowed for children, right? So if I am abducted and I'm tied down to the bottom of the basement and I'm getting lacerations that are getting bone deep, that person has kidnapped me. They should be facing criminal charges. Yes? Like, what are you thinking? There's already laws in the books that protect adults more so than children. So why are you like, I don't know, you're allowed to do whatever you want with kids. You can just like smack them up, right? You're such a shitty person. I can't even.
are not capable of being defined. The interesting thing about this case, of course, is the history and the background of the accused and the degree of alleged abuse and the evidence, which is what makes this case so fascinating for so many Americans to watch and to see how a jury will assess the competing claims of the state to protect the children versus the right of the free range parenting to do what they think is best. You know, none of us really knows what's best for our children. I mean, those of us who have been lucky enough to raise kids who have.
I'm fairly certain that the whole concept of free range parenting meant that they could homeschool them, right? But they still had a responsibility to actually homeschool them. That was not happening here, Ellen. They were not actually getting homeschooled. They were running free in the neighborhood. That's not the same thing as saying, you know, we're going to give you school choice, right? We're going to give you the opportunity to homeschool your kids. We're going to give you like the free range of how you want to raise your children. It does not mean you're going to get away with abuse. It does not mean you're going to get away with neglect. So I'm not an attorney. I know you are, but you're obviously like aging out at this point. Not possible that you can have your kids just running wild in the neighborhood and then take them 4 hours south, tie them to a ground panic room, and be like, yeah, this is normal. This is totally cool. This is part of free range parenting. Free range parenting, right, Alan?
Who have not been subject to these kinds of problems have to feel great compassion for parents who've tried their best and their kids turn out to be drug addicts or whatever. And it's awfully hard.
Wait, hold up. Are you trying to suggest that Ruby and Kevin were drug addicts? You're all over the map, Alan. These were supposedly like high-level business people in Utah who had high-level connections in the Mormon church. Okay, so they are drug addicts. Okay, let's go.
To find the precise line where the state should have the power to intrude into what is the most intimate of family relationships, the parent-child relationship. It's such a complex issue.
I do want to read, part of the comment here from the Children's Services Agency. They said free-range parenting laws do not absolve parents from supervising their children, but are intended to allow parents to teach their children independence and resilience, how they see fit based on the child's age and maturity.
That doesn't tell us very much.
Yeah.
I'm reading that. I don't know what it means, essentially. It means you have to strike the appropriate balance and put the children's welfare first. We all agree with that, but it doesn't give us the kind of lines that we need to separate bad parenting from criminal parenting.
So bottom line, Professor Derschowitz, how does Ruby Franke justify this in a court of law or defend herself? I mean, it seems if there is video evidence supporting that she was there and she was aware of the treatment that her children were receiving, then she's in deep trouble.
Well, there are two ways of defending in a case like this. One is to dispute the facts. And if you dispute the facts and you turn out to be wrong, the jury will not like you because the jury can see the facts with their own eyes. The other is to take a different tack and say, look, I did these things. I did it in the best interest of the children. Maybe people disagree with me. Maybe I was wrong. But they're my children. I had the right to make a decision to bring them up in the way I thought was best for them. You know, they're both.
No. You don't have that much free leniency to just like do whatever the fuck you want. You can't just fucking abuse your kids and just get off scot-free, Alan. And you know this. You were making up the biggest ass excuses for this goddamn family that was keeping their kids, their little kids, 10 and 12, in bondage with lacerations bone deep that they were pouring honey and cayenne pepper on their wounds. How can you constantly try and be like, I'm going to be the person who argues in defense of the horrible argument here? Like, why is that always the position you want to take?
Uphill defenses, but a good lawyer has to decide essentially between those defenses. Now, the lawyer could do both. Could say, look, I disagree. She didn't really do this, that, or the other thing. But even if she did, she did it in the best interest of the child.
Oh my God.
Look at the intent. Don't look at the result. Look at what was in the mind of the parent, and see and ask yourself, Can you really sit in judgment?
I can't wait until one of your relatives comes over to your house, hog ties you, and starts pouring in honey and cayenne all over your goddamn body. God damn it, dude.
Of her from so far away and with such different attitudes. That's probably the best you can do. That doesn't mean you're going to succeed. Look, as we know, over 90% of criminal trials result in convictions. So you start out with a strong presumption that there will be a conviction in any case, and particularly a case as high profile and as disturbing as this one. So the possibility, of course, is some kind of a plea bargain. And that really is something we're not in a position to assess.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't really like this guy personally. Derschowitz or whatever his name is. Don't really.
Yeah, you obviously are too young to know what's going on here. Okay. Wow. Alan, fucking retire. Because that's some bullshit that you just put out there. And that's so scary that you would put that out there about a children's case where there has been pretty clear abuse. And you're just like, I don't know, it's possible, corporal punishment and shit. Fucking go home. Go home, retire, and die. Because I'm so done with you and your bullshit and all of these abusers that you protect over and over again. Over and over again. You're like, I don't know. They might have a case here. Go home.